Hi, how you doing? Surprise. Welcome back to Smoking Cheltenham, the 11th of June. Yeah, I know. I, I said, didn't I, I'd be back to do an end of season review, and that never happened. Sorry. Basically, Punchestown finished, and like a switch just went, and I was just like, well, turned off from it all. But it's been kind of bugging me, gnawing away at me, like, I did say I'd come back, wouldn't I? So here I am. Now, as this much time's passed now, hey, I suppose it's only like 5 weeks ago, isn't it, since Punchestown finished. But I thought rather than do an end of season review, let's look forward and we'll do a full on 2026 Cheltenham preview. That's kind of like the first one, I'd imagine, as far as I know, anyway. Maybe there's others out there, I don't know. You probably haven't been looking, and why would you, Why would you this time? Yeah, don't blame you. But here we are. Apparently, there's only 272 days to go. Okay. So anyway, I hope you enjoyed your summer. Um, Cracking day today it is. So yeah, we'll go through all the races, all the Grade One races, and even like a couple of handicappers as well. So we'll start off with Supreme Bambino Fever. She's there 16 to 1. She's a bit of a cult hero here at Smoking Cheltenham. She did a lot of people a big favour. She was well back, weren't she? So yeah, a lot of people want her. And she followed up in a Grade One at Punchestown. She was plenty keen enough there. I thought, halfway round, I was like, don't know. You never know these end of season races. You get plenty sort of bomb out. But no, she did it well. She quickened smartly away. In many ways, I thought that was maybe her most impressive performance. Like, she just seems to be getting better. She's still unbeaten. Festival winning form. She's won 3 mile point to point, 2 mile 2.5. Trained by Willie, it's like what's not to like. She'll even be getting £7 from the boys. The only thing is she's got this option though of the mare's novice hurdle, hasn't she? That's a big option for her, as we saw last year with Lozzie Mouth. It's like if she's got a good chance in this, it should be near enough a penalty kick, you'd have thought, in the mare's novice. And like I say, with Lossiemouth last year, they do like the penalty kicks, don't they? So yeah, this will be a reoccurring thing as we go through this, a reoccurring theme. The amount of options Willie's got. So 16 to 1 looks. If she didn't have the option of the mare's novice, I'd be backing her at 16. I would, but the option is there, and there's got to be a fair chance she'll take it up. It'll just depend how Willie's stacked, won't it, next season? If he's, if he thinks he's got a strong chance without her in the mare's novice, and he's struggling a bit for the Supreme, she could well be rocking up here. But if he thinks he's well represented in the Supreme without her, then you'd be looking at the mare's novice. So Willie Mullins bingo, first horse, and we're already there, So yeah, best bumper form from last year, you'd have to say, but she has options, which makes it tricky to back her. I'll mention a few others there. Soldier Milan, he took out the 2 mile 2 bumper at Punchestown in good style. You were well back for that for Emmett Mullins and the Paul Byrne combo. now unbeaten in a point-to-point and a bumper. Could be JP boundaries, that sort of, you know, yeah, is that sort you could see him going to JP. I think he's top price 20s at Unibet. Minella Premier, we liked him, don't we? But we've still only seen him in that point-to-point. Didn't see him last year for Nicky. He did look exciting. He looked like he had loads of gears and pace, despite his sort of stout pedigree. I don't know the story with him. I don't know if he picked a knock-up, if maybe Nicky just thought he'd give him some time. He'll only be 6 next spring. He's 33s, and he's just one to keep an eye out for. Like, he'd be difficult to back him without seeing an entry. Like I said, I don't know anything what's going on with the horse. Kaiser Ball, he were impressive in a fairy house bumper for Willie. Put away since then. He'll be a 6-year-old next spring. He's very interesting, I'd say. The jockey put me off a little, you know, Costello, the amateur there, a big lad. Yeah, that put me off a bit, but he's available at 40-1. And then one more that's worth a mention. I'll say I'm not putting many selections. Well, I'm not putting anything up today, to be honest. You know, so I'll just give you my thoughts on the races as we are at the minute. You know, 272 days out. Yeah, the last one I mentioned there. Yeah, first Saturday in June. Obviously, that's a big day in the racing world, and again, it were this year as Willie Mullins introduced the son of Annie Power, Davy Crockett at Punchestown. Yeah, son of Annie Power out of Camelot, who I think won the Guineas and the Derby. Some of these flat racers, like, you know, yeah, I think he was decent on the flat Camelot. His mum were pretty good too, so yeah, lovely breeding there. He races for the JP Magnier Axis, and yeah, he looked good, you know. He's sent off 1-2 favourite. It looked to go fairly decent pace all the way round, and he quickened up well off it, and yeah, he won easy. He was impressive. Class name in it as well, Davy Crockett, like, you know. So he's top price 20s. Yeah. So we got Bambino Fever, Sold in Milan, Minella Premier, Kaiser Ball, Davy Crockett, a few names to conjure me there. I haven't had a bet in the Supreme yet. Like I say, if the mares weren't an option for Bambino Fever, yeah, I'd be there at 16s. Although she probably won't be 16s. Don't know. Davy Crockett, maybe. But yeah, and a bet, yeah. But yeah, they should be good horses to look out for next year, those. Right then, Arkle, right. Say it. Them horses for the Supreme as well, you know, okay. Anything trained by Willie, is you've got to mention it also for the Turners. So I won't be really talking about the Turners, like, you know. Right then, Arkle. Right. Favourite Lalamba. He gained revenge on his Cheltenham conqueror, Bonnie Ross, in the Grade 1 at Punchestown. Did it nicely. Nicky Anderson, he's got festival form. You'd have to say he's like the top 4-year-old from this season. Probably should have won it. I don't know how he didn't win, to be honest, at Cheltenham, but yeah, I think he was the best horse, weren't he, we thought, and yeah. He'll be a 5-year-old in the spring. Sergino Masborough were 5-year-olds. Sergino didn't make it. I'm sure he'd have won it. Like, Masborough should have won it. Is he up to that level? I'm not quite sure. And I haven't seen anything where he's guaranteed to be going chasing. Like, Nicky could keep in hurdles. I don't know. Personally, I just prefer like Kopek de boards from the Supreme rather than the Triumph form. He's a strong, imposing type. He looked a bit wild and immature, didn't he, last season, but still won a couple of Grade 1s. He won at Cheltenham despite doing plenty wrong. He was sort of keen enough. He was green, like looking up at the crowd. Didn't seem to be concentrating, like fluffed the last. He blew out at Punchestown, didn't he? But we'll give him a pass for that, Willie seemed to think he'd not got him fit enough. He said he'd not done enough with him since Cheltenham. I don't know. I mean, to me, I think he expands a lot of energy through his races, doesn't he? And, maybe just done enough at if he can channel that energy in the right direction, he's going to be some horse. Like, he's only a 5-year-old. Fence could settle him down. It often does when they're a bit keen, don't he? 7-1 is a decent price. I'd say 7's for him. Willie Money. He's got less than 2 lengths to make up on Kopek. He were learning as he went last season, weren't he? He was too keen early on. Improved for, I'd say, professional angling, and maybe for the hood at Cheltenham. Good thing about this fella is he's like nailed on to go Arkle, isn't he? He'll be an 8-year-old next spring, but he's lightly raced, He's top price 12s. I mean, I'd had a little bit on him at 16s and won Kopek already, so. Others to mention, could be a big contender, would be Amsterdam. He's unbeaten. He's 4 out of 4, 2 out of 2 for Willie. His season was curtailed by injury. Yeah, it were, wasn't it? You'll need a plus, by the way. Maybe even 2. So, full preview of this. Okay. Amsterdam, yeah, look. It seems like Willie thought this fella was maybe the best of his juveniles the year Masborough won it the season before last. But he didn't get him there, and he didn't make it this year either, did he? So that just worry a little bit, like, he's not made Cheltenham the last 2 years. The soundness issues, like ability, yeah, he looks to have loads of that, doesn't he, though? And after he won that Grade 3 this season, Willie seemed quite excited to be sending him chasing, like, for this season. With those issues over soundness, though, if he does get him back, well, maybe he'll decide to keep him hurdling. Like, I've heard him say before, it's easy to keep a horse sound over hurdles, so maybe that would come into play as well. Others to mention, Irancy and Salvatore Monday. Irancy were very impressive at Punchestown, weren't he? He was well back at Cheltenham as well for the Supreme. Connections, Mark Walsh were pains to say, like, he just didn't handle the track at Cheltenham, and even at Punchestown he didn't enjoy the hill. So that would have to, you know, put you off a little bit in terms of Cheltenham. Salvatore Mundy's similar comments apply. He won well at Aintree, didn't he? But again, you know, connections raised questions after the race and even before the race about the track at Cheltenham, you know. Kawabunga, he's worth a mention, you know. He didn't make Cheltenham either, did he? But his form ties in nicely with like the top novices from last year. But again, you know, you'd have sound like ante-post. You don't want, you know, soundness issues, do you really? But is a name to be looking out for anyway. What was that? That was weird, wasn't it? I don't know. Screen just went a bit funny then. Ah, the fly. It landed right on the thing there. Right. As professional as ever, eh? You know. Right, where were I? The yellow clay, just worth a little mention for this. We'll talk a bit more about him, we'll chat a bit more later, but yeah, he's 33s, you know. It could be interesting for this. He could be. So, where are we then? In summary, yeah, we're on Copet de boards. So I backed him at 9s before Cheltenham for the double thing. Topped up at 5s, put him up here at 5s, then he bombed out, didn't he, at Punchestown. Went out to 9s, had a little bit on him again at 9s, then he got cut to 7s, so the 5s are kind of cashed out. Lost a bit of stake there, to being honest, I did, but I'm kind of on him at 9s. For our purposes, one at 5s, and he's 7s now. Genius. But, you know, hopefully, you know, yeah, hopefully it might turn out for us, that one. You know, he's a good horse, he is. But Willie does have other options there. Right then, Mares Hurdle. This is a bit of a minefield, it is. And going back to the Arkle, I guess, you know, William won it each way at 12s. Feels like a pretty solid bet. Right. Mares Hurdle, yeah, minefield like. Top of the betting there, Lossiemouth, of course. I personally, we didn't talk much about this, did we? But I personally was a bit disappointed with it at Aintree, you know, but subsequently, Connection said she was kind of hanging there on the ground, found the ground a little quick, and she weren't seen since, was she? They put her away after that. So we'll give her a pass for that. I mean, she won, and the second's a fair horse, you know, but still I thought she'd do it a bit easier than that. You know, before Aintree, I had a little bit on her at 8s on Betfair for this champion hurdle, or for the champion hurdle rather than the mares. But she could come here again, couldn't she? I had to do that for my own sanity. If she comes here, she wins again, you know. But she does have the champion hurdle as an option. Jade de Greavesy, she was impressive at Punchestown, weren't she? I'd say she improved from Cheltenham, you know. Yeah, I think she came on again. She's unbeaten bar 2 runs at Cheltenham, so you could say maybe Cheltenham's a problem for her. I don't think it is. You know, she got pretty poor poor ride in that sort of car crash of a mare's novice hurdle. And, you know, this season she was a good second behind Lossiemouth, who, you know, if you think she's a champion hurdler or not, she's a bit of a superstar, isn't she, you know. Were a good run. She beat the rest well. And she'd only made a reappearance, you know, a few weeks before that. Like I say, I think she came on before that again. After Punchestown, Willie pointed her to the mare's hurdle. Okay. We've heard it before, haven't we? But he did say mare's hurdle for her. So I'd got a little bit on Corgi, so I cashed that out after that for like no loss. But you'd imagine if Jade Greaves is coming here, Corgi should be going somewhere else, you know. She's high class, she's honest, she's consistent, she's not a superstar, you know, but she's well up to winning a mares. She has won a grade 1, as has Lossiemouth. She's 4-1. We mentioned, didn't we, after Cheltenham, they could well change the conditions for this race, which, like I say, it does make it a bit of a minefield. We don't know yet. Nothing's been said as far as I know. Right, next thing we've got Woodoo. She lost her unbeaten record behind Lossiemouth, but still ran a great race there, you know. She took the Martin Pipe out in good style. She's going to have a big chance in this. She's a festival winner. Like I say, this will be a target. Just maybe ground dependent is just a feeling, well, from me anyway. I don't know how she's going to handle like soft heavy ground. So ante-post 5-1. You could be taking a bit of a chance on the ground there as well. Golden Ace, you know, 2 times festival winner now, the current champion hurdler. She were fortunate, weren't she, at Cheltenham, and State Man put her in a place at Punchestown. I'd say connections are in bonus territory with this horse, you know, and as such they might just let her defend a crown in the champion hurdle, whatever price she goes off there. But on the face of it, you know, this would make more sense if they're trying to bring up a hat-trick who wins, like, you know. And if she came here, she'd be a serious contender. She's also a grade 1 winner, you know. 16-1. Right. I'm going through quite a few more horses than I normally sort of go through, I think. So I'll do a full sort of preview, and there's plenty I won't mention, like, you know, but yeah, just give you my thoughts on some of these. I just sort of picked out the horses I thought were most interesting. Air of Entitlement, yeah, festival winner, stormed up the hill, didn't she? It should be well suited by a 2.5 mile. Ran no race at Fairy House in the grade 1. We could put a line through that. Henry's weren't running well there. She's a fine big scopy mare, and as such she could easily go chasing, you know. She's 20-1 for this, and she's got the benefit of not being a grade 1 winner. Grade 2, weren't it? She won at Cheltenham, which may or may not be a benefit depending if they do anything with the race. Just a name I plucked out at a huge price is Let It Rain. Yeah, she's a big price for this. She's 3 from 4. I think there were plenty more to come from her, but she picked up a knock. I'm not sure how serious that were. You know, Skelton, you know, got a good record in this race. She's got no graded penalties, if that's a thing or not. And she's 50-1. Like I say, a bit of a minefield this it is. Personally, I think you've got to wait till autumn to be having a bet in this race. If there's no change to the conditions, you'd find it hard to be having a bet with Lossiemouth in there, I'd have thought. If they do change the conditions, you know, and heavily penalise or exclude Grade 1 winners, that opens up the race a lot and it makes it more interesting to have a bet in, a bit more appealing. Like, you know, Woodoo would look the obvious one at 5-1, but you have got that ground concern. You just should be. I don't know. She's not big. I don't know. She'd be handling soft, heavy ground. Ev Entitlement at 20s would look interesting, but I think you just gotta again be waiting to see if she goes chasing or not, and Let It Rain at like a massive price at 50s could be interesting, but again, you want to be sort of waiting for the trainer, you know, stable tours and stuff, see what the injury were, and you know, see if she's okay. So yeah, difficult race to be having a bet in at this stage. Okay, so yeah, we're sort of rambling on here, having a good ramble. And not really getting you any bets either, so that's just what we're doing. Champion Hurdle then. Yeah, favourite is the New Lion. Unbeaten for Dan Skelton, JP. Like I said at the time, I thought that Turner's looked strong, Grade 1 form. I think this is pretty much nailed on to be his target. He's 9-2. It's fucking fly. Yeah, the only thing you'd say about him is he's not done 2 mile yet over hurdles. It's all 2.5, you know, but he does look to have plenty of speed there. Lossiemouth, as I mentioned, I am on. I had to have a little bit for my sanity at like 8s. So I covered her re-entry, a bit disappointed. Is she a 2 mile Grade 1 hurdler? She's got that to prove she has. I've always thought, yeah, particularly at Cheltenham. You know, Cheltenham, I don't know, she's 4 from 4, 5 from 5, but she's unbeaten there, you know. But I don't know, maybe I've got a few more doubts than I had previous. Just clearly, Willie and Paul rate State Man higher, you know, and if it weren't for the last hurdle last season, they'd have been proved right, wouldn't they, as well, you'd imagine. So, I don't know, a target's uncertain. We'll have to wait until see if there's any, you know, if they change the rules for the mares, then that kind of forces her in here. But with State Man about, you'd have to say in the yard anyway, should be regarded as a second string on everything we've seen and heard up to now. I love that, I do. Right, State Man then, yeah, look, he's won a champion hurdle, should have been 2. You know, won well at Punchestown. Paul loves him. He's 14 from 20 under rules, rated 168, 8-1. Yeah, looks solid, doesn't he? He does seem to improve in those cheap pieces. You know, if they'll continue to bring that improvement out of him, I don't know. Sometimes these things work for a while, don't they? And then maybe go a little stale. Behind these 3 in the market, we've got Constitutional at 12s. Not for me, you know. No, you know, no. Amsterdam, 16s. Willie could decide if he gets him back, and he, you know, he's sound and everything. He could decide to maybe keep him over hurdles. Copet de Boers, I think, certain to go chasing. La Lambert, 20s. Nicky could, could come here. I don't know. Golden Ace, 25s. You'd have to say, I think, behind the front few, I think he's struggling a bit. So, 92 New Lion, 5s Lossiemouth, 8 State Man. They might not be the worst prices, looking at what's behind them there. I think if I had to recommend a bet, it's... New Lion is unbeaten 92, he's running. That's maybe not a bad bet, I was going to prove it 2 mile, but this fly. Flies. They always come back as well, don't they? Just bugger off. Right then. Browns. Right, yeah, Wednesday Browns. Yeah, favourite Final Demand. 4-1 best price. Generally 3s, you can get 4s and a bit of 7-2. Only defeat today came at Cheltenham in that Turners. It would be 5.5 lengths, I think. Yeah, I think 5.5 lengths there behind the New Lion. Bounced back from that defeat, didn't he, at Punchestown? He was impressive there. Won by 16. Yellow clay blew out though, didn't he? So maybe he only had to kind of repeat the form of his Cheltenham run there. I did think that Lovely Erling ran a nice race though. He's a nice sort of prospect himself. I had plenty of people making excuses for him after Cheltenham, he needs soft ground. Paul should have been more positive on him. Personally, I don't think he needs any excuses for that run at Cheltenham. I thought it were a cracking run for like a 3 mile chaser against 2 quicker horses. If we look at the last 10 Turners winners, right, I've wrote these down. I've mentioned this before. We've got Ballyburn, who we don't know stays 3 mile yet. You'd say Ballyburn's best form today is certainly 2.5. Impera Pass, same 2.5. Sigurd, 2.5. Bob Ollinger, yeah, he did take out the stayers, didn't he? But he's best at 2.5, isn't he? Envoy Allen, yeah, he's barely gets 3 mile. Like Bob Ollinger and Envoy Allen barely get 3 mile, despite winning at 3 mile. The best at 2.5. City Island, Sam Crow, Willoughby Court. There's no horses there that improve for going 3 mile. It does suit horses with a bit of sort of speed, So for a 3 mile chase, I thought he ran a fine race. He ran a similar race to Denman when Denman got beat by Nicanor. He just got done for a bit of toe after the last. It does remind me, I know I've said before plenty of times, it does remind me of Denman. He's a big strapping 3 mile chaser. We ran a similar race to him in that race. I'm really excited to see what he can do. Steps up to 3 mile and a fence. 4-1 top price. You'd say that's too short, wouldn't you? And I wouldn't like to argue with that. But he looked too short before Cheltenham at 6s. He looked too short after Cheltenham at 6s. By the time he makes his Chase debut, I'd imagine he'd be looking at 3s top price. That's a bit short, isn't it? After that Chase debut, you might be looking at 6-4. It's too short, isn't it? After the DRF, you might be looking at 4-6. far too short, isn't it? And he might go off as short as 2 to 5 on the day. That's if his season goes how I think it might well. So he's one of them horses. I think he's always going to be a bit too short. So it's up to you if you get on him or not. But yeah, we've got a bit on him at sixes, haven't we? Right then. Yellow Clay, he had a great season, didn't he? Huge run at Cheltenham. He ran the new line to less than a length, comfortably in front of Final Demand. I'd say it's easy enough to give his Punchestown run. He was on the go since Down Royal. I'd put a line through that. I'd love him for the Stayers, I think. I don't know. I don't know where he goes, this horse. Gordon's got Tupu there. You'd think he's going to go chasing. He's not slow, is he? If we say New Lion's a champion hurdle horse, he's not slow. I wouldn't rule him out dropping to the Narcle, He's at Yates. Yates is a strong enough influence for stamina. I think he'll go. I think he's nearly nailed on. If he goes chasing, which I think he will, I think he'll go to that 2.5 mile beginners, at Down Royal early season. Then he'll probably go to Drinmore, the grade 1 there, 2.5 at Fairyhouse. Where he goes after that, I don't know. It probably depends what he's shown. Light Final Demand is only 6, but he has had 2 full seasons now. He's had 7 more runs under rules. I'd like Final Demand to improve past him, 3 mile over fences myself. But, he's 33s for the Arkle, 10s for the Browns, 20s for the Stayers. He's a quality horse and he'll be a contender wherever he turns up. I just want that 33s for the Arkle could look big, maybe. You could say. I do think that Turner's was strong form. If you're liking the New Lion for the champion hurdle, he's 9 to 2 favourite. 33s for the Arkle. Don't quite add up, does it? But yeah, he's short for the Browns and he could well go that way. Jasmine DeVoe, yeah, 2-time festival winner. He's won the Bartlett and the Bumper, didn't he? He backed that up at Punchestown as well. You'd say that probably his best jumping performance. It won tidy at the last 2, particularly at the last, where Paul lost his irons. I love this horse for the Stayers, but Ballyburn could be going to the Stayers, and you wouldn't have thought Willie's going to, he doesn't seem to care much for the Stayers. You wouldn't have thought he's going to send 2 grade 1 horses to that. So he could well go chasing, but for me he looks a bit small. I wouldn't fancy him over a fence, but maybe he'll surprise, He's 12 to 1 for this. So I just got a bit of a problem with my teeth, so my speech might not be so clear today, so I apologise for that. Right then, others to mention, Big Westerners. She's 20s for this. She could well go the Mayor's Chase though. Brighter Days Ahead. She's 25s again, could go Mares. Honesty Policy, he came to the fore in the spring, didn't he? He took out grade 1 at Aintree, ran a big race at Punchestown. He's 25s. And for the Brits, we got like Wendigo and Darius and Paddy both at 25s. You know, they should have cracking seasons over here. Particularly Darius and Paddy, I like him. It was that run before Cheltenham when that horse sort of tried to intimidate him, and he just sort of bounced off him. He just bounced him off, didn't he? Like, you know, I like him. He looks fine, big chasing type. Like, you know, Wendigo too though. Yeah, they'll do well over here. So there's some nice horses in there, isn't there? But I think this Final Demand for me is tremendously exciting. You know, I think he's going to be class. I fancy he's going to take it out and then go on to the Gold Cup. Like, you know, if his season goes how I think it will be, I'll be kind of looking for that sort of bet as we go along. Like, you know, for the double. Yeah, he'd be like, I don't know. He's like my Cheltenham nap at this stage. You know, if you want to be taking the prices, I don't know. That's up to you. Maybe try getting some free bets on him or something. You know. So a lot of these races aren't really got a strong view as yet, but I do have a strong view in that. I do like Final Demand, as you may have gathered. Okay. Right then, Champion Chase. Yes, Sergino's favourite is 7-2. I've just put question mark. You know. We'll go to the others. Marine National 6-1. 2 times festival winner. So we do like festival form. It stacks up, doesn't it? It does. Yeah, he backs it up at Punchestown as well, where impressive. This might be a little harsh, but for me, I just weren't sure about him under pressure. And well, I looked to be travelling over Quilixios at the last. He came down, didn't he? And I just wanted to see what he'd find off the bridle. Again at Punchestown, El Fabiolo came there travelling well, and he tipped up 2 out. You know, both times he won impressive when he came home strongly from the last. You know, you've got to give him the benefit of the doubt. I'd like to see. Yeah, I'd just like to see him off the bridle and battle, but you know, maybe I'm a bit harsh there. Ilate Tomps, well, he was brilliant, weren't he? At Sandown, thought John Bond was unbeatable at Sandown, pretty much, and he downed John Bond, didn't he, at Sandown at the end of the season. He's 7s. He's been to Cheltenham 3 times and got beat 3 times. That'd be a worry there. Masborough, next in at 8s. His jumping let him down in the Arkle, didn't it? He did make amends at Punchestown. He jumped persistently left there, you know. You'd like to see him jump straight, like, you know. And he got worse as the race went on there. I think this horse has got the engine, like, I think he's got the speed as well. And when he does jump well, he's fairly quick. He jumps like a 2-miler. Just not well enough at the moment, but he's only 5 and he could improve. Untested beyond 2 mile, and he's an unknown. You know, he could improve hugely. Stepped up in trip. I don't know, but like I say, he does jump. He jumps quick enough to be a 2-miler. He's just, you know, I wouldn't rule him out on account of his jumping. I remember, you know, this time last year, I know the way he's thinking. Loved him for the national. Didn't think he jumped well enough at that stage for a Gold Cup, but his jumping improved through the season, didn't it? So, you know, like I say, he's only 5 now, so we'll see. He's got time on his side. He's just got to improve that technique. Gaelic Warriors 33s for this. I guess he'd be unlikely. We've seen him up in trip, didn't we, in the spring? But if he come up soft heavy, who knows? with that horse. Who knows? In summary, I think it's difficult to have a bet in this because Sergino's there. I thought Sergino blew me away. I thought he was going to be like a generational talent at 2 miles, up there with Nicky's best past greats, But he nearly died, From what we were told, he nearly died. And as such, you couldn't be taking 72 about us that were nearly dead, really, could you? I would have thought. But at the same time, because I rated him so much, I'm sort of loath to back against him. I think it's hard until we've seen Sergino, if we see him again. If he comes out early on next season and he looks as good as ever, I wouldn't like to be taking him on. But at the same time, I don't see how you can back him at 7-2. Marine National, he looks a solid one, doesn't he, really, at sixes. Historically been quite hard to double up in this, but, you just have a little query on the ground if it come up like heavy side or soft. Maybe an each way double with William Money, the same connections, that could be tempting for a few. Yeah, for me it's a no bet race just at the moment. So I think we've got to see Sergino, Mayor's Novice Hurdle, we won't spend too much time on this. Bambino Fever's there at 3-1, only one firm's prices up, Unibet. And yeah, she looked to have a great chance if she comes here, but she could get tempted. They could be tempted to go Supremia. Just an horse in this division that's worth a mention. I think I don't think she's priced up for this, but Charisma. I mentioned her a couple of times for Nicky. She was eye-catching, I thought, on a hurdles debut at Windsor behind Jubilee Alpha. She was very weak in the market, but shaped nicely there. Nicky sent her to Punchestown. She was way too keen, far too keen through the race. Halfway I gave her no chance, but she stayed on surprisingly well, considering that. She stayed on really well to the line, and she'll be a novice for next season. If Nicky can get her to settle, if he can get her to drop it a bit and teach her to race, she's got some ability. A second season novice, she could be interesting for this. She's got a mark of 127, and some maybe like the Jerry Fielden scribbled down. Nicky's got a bit of history with that race. Should be the sort of type for that, maybe. Yeah, I think she's one to note for next season anyway. If she's quite up to this level, I don't know, but she's interesting anyway, I'd say. Right, Ryanair then. Sat there top of the pile, we got Factor File at 4-1. Yeah, he made a successful transition to open company, taking out the John Durkin on his seasonal return. He beat Spillane's Tower and Galloping Deschamps there. Stepped up to 3 mile, he was swatted aside by Galloping, weren't he? And just didn't look to get home over that trip. So they dropped him to 2.5 in the Ryanair, and he looked awesome, didn't he? He did. Arguably the sort of most impressive performance of the week. He didn't look slow there, so they dropped him to 2 mile at Punchestown. He was never travelling. It could have been an end of season thing, or he's just not a 2 miler. He does look like just a 2.5 miler. He's like Alato-esque, I guess they'll give him a chance at 3 Mile again, next season. But on what we've seen so far, you'd say he's a doubtful stay for the Gold Cup, and he'll probably end up here again. You look at JP's as well. He's got Masborough, Factor File. I know the way you're thinking. You'd think that's the way they'd go, 2.5, Gold Cup. Yeah, got a great Cheltenham Festival record, and he finished runner-up in the bumper. He's won the Browns and took out a Ryanair. He's a likely runner, really, I'd say, but I guess you couldn't say he's a certain runner. He deserves to be favourite. I think what you would say, maybe, if you're trying to knock holes in him, is this Ryanair didn't look the strongest renewal. And you look at some of the names behind him in this, and yeah, he could potentially be a lot hotter this year, potentially. You never know, do you? I remember going into last season, we thought the Gold Cup looked like could be the best Gold Cup ever, and it just didn't pan out that way, did it? But Masborough's here, one thing you'd say for certain is Masborough won't be taking on Factor File. You wouldn't have thought, surely they're going to split them. Much more likely Masborough goes Champion Chase, I'd have thought. Gaelic Warriors here at 10-1. Gaelic Warriors, this horse. If you play ante-post and you haven't had your fingers burnt by this horse once or twice, you're a better man than me. Yeah. Mercurial talent is. He struggled 2 Mile Leopardstown, didn't he, this season? Just didn't even go to Cheltenham, Went to the 3 Mile Grade 1 entry bowl and took that out under sublime Patrick Mullins' ride. It were a great ride, that. You didn't really see it so much on the replay, but there were a point where he kind of takes a tug. He's kind of disappeared from pitch. I remember watching it live, and he definitely took a little pull on him, I think around sort of coming to the second last. It were a beautiful ride, it were. I'd say that was the best I've seen Patrick Mullins ride over a fence, that. He followed up, didn't he? He dropped in grade slightly in trip in the 2 Mile 6 Oaks here at Sandown. This horse has got options, hasn't he? He's always got options. I think Rich Ritchie was keen to go King George. I think he mentioned that. He'd look a nice sort of type for the King George. If he went there and won, you'd imagine he'll go Gold Cup, But if he went there and got beat, you'd imagine he'd probably go Ryanair, He's actually only rated £3 behind Factor File. I'm not quite sure, if he's quite as good as like a Factor File or like a Galloping. I know the way you're thinking, but he's good, isn't he? I must admit, I took a bit of change on him at 33s for Gold Cup. After Aintree, he was 33s. He's into 20s now. He'll probably rock up in Stayers Hurdle or something. I don't know. Don't follow me in on this horse. They'll just say he's a difficult horse to get right, but the talent's there. Ilate Tomps, yeah, another one of Willie's here. We already discussed him a little bit. I'd probably like him more for the Ryanair than the Champion Chase. Maybe just help him a little with his jumping, which has never been great at Cheltenham. And I remember sort of pre-season last year, Willie were talking about going out in trip with him. He mentioned the King George for him. He looked great at Sandown though, didn't he? But yeah, none from 3 at Cheltenham. In this company, you know, we're talking like Gaelic Warriors and Factor Files. Probably not for me. Caldwell Potter, he's in here at 14's best. He was very impressive at the festival. He were only an handicap of 146, but still he looked good, didn't he? And he followed that up in Grade 1 company, stepped up to 3-1 at Aintree. That race did fall apart a bit, you know, but he does have scope to improve. He could also go out to the Gold Cup trip. John Bond's here. Nah, he's going to be 10 into next year. Not for me, John Bond. He's had plenty of chances, hasn't he, at Cheltenham now at the festival. Django Bay. We love Django Bay. He's 22's here. He took out the Arkle. Okay, a bit fortunate, but he did. You know, never looked to be going at Aintree early on. Didn't jump as well as he could. You know, probably feeling the effects of that, but he was still only beat less than 2 lengths there. You know, he's 2 from 2 at Cheltenham. He could progress into sort of Ryanair Gold Cup horse. There's even others as well. Jaguar, you know, he's rated 148. Look like there's a lot more to come from him. He won the plate, didn't he? You can see him progressing again next season. He's only 6 now. And yeah, Jukebox Man, mention him. He looked good last year, didn't he? Picked up an injury. You know, you'd say there looks a bit more depth potentially to this race than they did last year. At this stage, Factor File is the one to beat. 4-1, maybe. I don't know. You know, yeah, deserves to be favourite. 4-1, maybe not a gift at this stage just yet. You know. Stayers Hurdle, yeah, Teapot's there, favourite 6-1. He's run 3 times in the Stayers Hurdle, finishing 3rd, 1st and 2nd. Coming up for an hour. I said you need your plaster today. Yeah, outspeeded by Bob, weren't he, this year on the ground. He didn't go too quick, but he made amends at Punchestown. He's a solid 160s horse. You know, 6-1 is fair. Ballyburn's here at 8, 2nd favourite. He was disappointing, weren't he, last season over fences. After Punchestown, Willie, you know, strongly hinted he'd be coming back to hurdles with this horse. As such, 8-1, you'd think's a nice price, but he is keen. He's yet to prove his stamina for this sort of 3 mile. But I'd say 8-1's fair, like, you know. Jasmine DeVoe, 2 from 2 at the festival. You know, won a bumper, Albert Bartlett. Yeah, we talked about him when we were chatting about the Browns, didn't we? His jumping was terrible last year, weren't it? But it did improve to just about adequate, you know, by the end of it. I love him for this. That hurdle track on at Cheltenham is just ideal for him, you know. He's 14s. Yeah, he followed up at Punchestown despite Paul losing his irons. He don't look like a chaser to me. I'd really like him for this. I would, you know. But I've got a feeling they'll probably try him over fences, you know. So then I can't think of too many horses, do you know. Willie tried over fences and then came back over hurdles through that season. He tends to give him a full season at it. Yeah, I did have a bit on at 14s, but I probably done my money there. But if he did end up in this, I'd really like him, you know. Bob Ollinger, he's here, isn't he? He'll be 11. I couldn't have him at 11. I'm not, legend of the horse, but I don't know. I won it this year, but I couldn't have him this year either, and he won it. So who knows? Honesty, Policy, and the Yellow Clay. Probably more likely to go chasing. Jimmy Desoy's here, 25s. He won the Gold Cup in good style. He's rated 155 on official figures. He ain't got that much to find. It's a bit misleading, I think, handicap ratings as opposed to graded ratings. But again, it's Willie, isn't it? How many is he going to throw at this? You'd imagine only one big dart, so he might go chasing two. So we'll have to see what Willie's plans are for next season. But, going on what we've heard up to now, you'd say, like Ballyburn out of his, so the others will probably all be going chasing. I don't know. I'd have to see Ballyburn settle a bit and really get the three well before I got involved, I think. So yeah, in summary, I like Jasmine DeVoe, but might well be on an on-runner with that one. So I couldn't really recommend betting him. Ryanair Chase. This looks a race, potentially, Dino Blue's favourite, deserving favourite, 4-1. She made it fourth time lucky, didn't she, this year at Cheltenham? She wasn't much too good for him, weren't she? But it was a sort of shocking race. It looked a poor renewal. But, you look at her record, she's had 16 chase runs and she's come first or second in 14 of them. And she's took out 8 of those races, She's got an official rating of 160. She sets the standard. Just have a slight question mark with the ground, as we saw the season before. She wouldn't want it heavy. However, you look behind her, and hopefully this season's race will be a bit stronger. It certainly looks like it could be on paper at this stage. Spindlebury's there at 6-1. She's a 7-year-old. She'll be 8 next year, but she's lightly raced for her age. She's 1 from 3 over hurdles. One of those defeats with a runner-up in a Grade 1 behind Jade DeGrugy. She's 3 from 3 over fences, slammed by her Luminescence at Fairyhouse before following up at the same track in Grade 1 company against the boys. She took that out in good style. She's only raced left-handed once in a bumper on debut. Since then it's all right-handed. I don't know if that's by design or not. She's certainly got very strong Fairyhouse form. She's 3 from 4 there, and like I say, her only defeat was to Jade DeGrugy in a Grade 1 at Fairyhouse. I love her. She hits the line hard, doesn't she? We won last year at 16's non-runner no bet. Maybe we just played her a year too soon. Like I say, she hits the line hard, and you'd imagine she'd love that hill, I do really like her. I like Spindlebury. Brighter Days Ahead is here at 6-1. She put up a huge performance, didn't she, at Christmas? And you'd have to say, in hindsight, that just sort of bottomed her out for the year. She has been beat twice at Cheltenham now. And that form at Cheltenham is some way below her form elsewhere, so that I'd have to worry a bit, I'd say. However, she is rated 160 over hurdles, and on looks, you'd say she'd make a better chaser. She'd be the only horse I'd fear in that what used to be Moriarty, for Final Demand. as such, she should be going into this. She could be a really short price for this. Maybe there's a trading opportunity there, at 6-1. You'd want to see her down, I guess, before getting involved. You'd want to see her declared for beginners because she were going chasing last season and she didn't. So, maybe she don't look sort of jump as well as she looks. I don't know. I don't know what the story were there really, but she wouldn't be for me at Cheltenham. But like I say, you could get her on side at a nice price and trade out maybe. It's not hard to imagine her sort of going to Cheltenham unbeaten, and she could be going there odds on. Only by nights here, only narrowly defeated in the Arkle. On the face of it, that would be good form for Ryanair Chase, but as it turned out, it weren't the best Arkle, and he'd have a little doubt still at the trip. At 8s, probably not for me. The big Westerner, yeah, fine, big scopy mare. Ran a blinder at the festival in the Grade 1 Albert Bartlett. Could have the option of going the Browns. She could be exciting. It should be like an exciting novice. She's 10s. Another potentially exciting novice for Henry, as we mentioned before, air of entitlement. She'd have the option of going the Mare's Hurdle, but again, another sort of fine, big scopy type for chasing. Yeah, like we said, she stayed on well, didn't she, up that hill? A little bit too well for my liking. She's 33s for this, which would look big, I'd say. It does look like a potentially hot race, but yeah, if you knew she were going chasing, you'd say 33s were big, but we don't know, so no. Jade DeGrugy, now, Willie said she's going Mare's Hurdle, and it wouldn't be like Willie to change his mind, would it? Yeah. Yeah, looks like she's going Mare's Hurdle. If he did change his mind, she's anywhere between 5-1 and 33-1 for this. If you knew she were going over fence at 33s, it'd be a must bet, wouldn't it? Good horse, proper Grade 1 mare. Not listed in the betting, but worth a mention, I think, is this Jubilee Alpha at Paul's, Paul Nichols. She showed disappointing, I guess. I think she was quite well fancied, weren't she, for that mare's novice, 8th at 23, beating 19 length. She bounced back from that and, won at Cheltenham, stepped up to 2.5 there at the end of the season in a listed race. I mention her because, she's got a fine staying chasing pedigree. She's a Flowmansworth out of a King's Theatre mare, which catches the eye, for fences. Yeah, so either way, she goes chasing. She should be thinking a cracking season over here. Like, should be one to follow this side of the Irish Sea. Okay. In summary, then, I think Dino Blue sets a standard. We were a poor race this year, weren't it? And there's a lot of potential in behind her. So Big Western Air entitlement could be exciting. Novices. I like Spindleby, I do, I'd find it difficult to not be with her, after liking her so much for it this year. And so she'd be my selection. Is she a bet at 6s right now? I don't know, I've not played her myself yet. Okay. Right then, we're getting there. Albert Bartlett, yeah, this would be a mad race, wouldn't it, really? I've got that create storage space. Right, okay, we'll try and speed this up. don't want to have to cut it into two parts again. Yeah, this be a mad race to play, long range, wouldn't it? You'd say Albert Bartlett, but I've got to mention a horse that I do really like going into this division, and you know, if you watch me for a while, you'll just know, won't you? Who I'm going to say. Gordon Elliott's He Can't Dance. It's a winning point-to-pointer, which has been quite a strong trend for the Albert Bartlett. You know, he won his bumper, he got gelded, then he came third, beaten less than 2 lengths in a grade 2 at the DRF, and he ran fair enough there at Cheltenham, you know, 8th of 17, beat 8 lengths or so behind Bambino Fever. His full sister's in training, a horse called Music de Fille, who's in training for Georgina Nichols, which actually translates to fairy music. He Can't Dance. Jukebox juries, aren't they? Yeah, she's a grey mare. You'd say she's fairly modest, I guess, but she has won 4 out of her last 6, and she's improved from 91 to 123, and she stays 3.5 miles. You know, I just like this horse. I think he's got a nice attitude, and I just think he'll improve a lot up in trip. He's a nice stayer in the making, I think, for Gigginstown. Impossible really to know if he's just going to make up into a nice handicap or a grade 1 horse, but I do like him. He's only Unibet price this race up, and they've got him in at 25s. I've not backed him yet, but if I were to recommend one bet really today at the prices, I might have a little bit on him at 25s, I think, you know. Yeah, maybe a bit wild. You don't know. Maybe you get a bit bigger when all the other bookies price it up, you know. But I like him. Gold Cup then. I know the way you're thinking. 4-1 favourite. You know, 2 from 2 over course distance. It took out the Kim Muir under top weight as a 6-year-old. Followed that up in a grade 1 at Aintree that season. The form of that worked out well. He improved steadily through the season, didn't he, this year, and, you know, put up a big performance in the Gold Cup. I like his chances of doubling up in this, I do. He'll be 8 next year, should be at his absolute prime. The price 4-1 I'm not so sure about. I did have a bit on him at 5s. I'm expecting to be able to top up on a bit on him at a bigger price sometime through the season. If you look at his sort of profile, I know his ability were kind of masked as a novice as he were being aimed at that handicap. But then last season again, I don't know, it was first season in open company, so you're going to have that natural improvement through the season you often get with a novice, horse coming out of novice company into open company. And his jumping did improve, you know, but even so, it's like these guys, it's like if it ain't broke, don't fix it. You can see him being steadily brought along again to peak in the spring. I'd expect him to be more competitive in the early season races, I guess, than he were this season, but still, you know, I think it might be the Irish Gold Cup before you see him put up any sort of, you know, decent sort of performance, and I'd expect him to step up markedly on that at Cheltenham. So as such, you know, he could get beat a couple of times early on, and we could be looking at sort of 8s, 10s for him. Galloping Deschamps, you know, if we're doing the end of season review, yeah, horse of the season, Galloping Deschamps, even though he got beat, okay. Yeah, even though he got beat at Cheltenham. He's 12 from 18 over fences. Since his Chase debut, he's raced exclusively in grade 1s. He's took 2 Savills, 3 Irish Gold Cups, 2 Cheltenham Gold Cups, loads of the races. It's fair to say, I think generally he's regarded as probably the best staying chaser since sort of KO Star and Denman. He would never going early way in the Gold Cup, looked in trouble early on, still threatened to win it coming down the hill. You know, But he bounced back, didn't he, at Punchestown? He did, to claim like his first Punchestown Gold Cup. He'll get beaten John Durkin again, won't he? That's Savills at Christmas, you know. It'd be a brave man to be taking him on there, you know, and then he'll be going for his 4th Irish Gold Cup. He'll be a 10-year-old though at Cheltenham. Not for me, okay? Not for me. But you never know. Like I say, I couldn't add Bob Ollinger for the same reason. Although, also, I didn't think he stayed 3, like, you know. I like I know the way you're thinking. But yeah, great horse, obviously galloping. Factophile, you know, I don't think he stays this. I think he's more likely to go Ryanair. But yeah, they'll probably give him a crack at it again at 3 Mile. Gaelic Warrior could come here, could do. You know, Masborough, I doubt he'd come here. You never know, but you know, he's 25s. Heighty Colours, yeah, fantastic season, but were kindly handicapped for most of it. You know, took out the Irish national. I'd imagine more a Grand National type myself. Lecky Watson took out the Browns. Same sort of sentiments. I think probably more a Grand National type. The like, kind of fringe Gold Cup Grand National types to me. Caldwell Potter's worth a mention at 33s. He's going like the A+ Tard route, isn't he, after taking that novice handicap. Could end up in the Ryanair. You know, I won't put anyone off if they wanted a bit of change at 33s. If we were to pick one big price one, I think I'd just favour Django Bay. You know, an Arca winner, fortunate one maybe, with Masborough sort of throwing it away. Don't know if he stays, but he's always hit the line well, hasn't he? You don't know until he tries. 2 from 2 at Cheltenham. You know, a bit of stamina on his damn side. Cap guard, damn sire, sire A+ Tard. 40-1. Could be worth a bit of change, you know. Yeah, I like the horse. In summary, I'm quite strong on I Know the Way You're Thinking I Am, and I have backed him, and I'll be looking to have a bit more on him once he gets beat, hopefully, early season. Right, and that's all the grade 1s then at Cheltenham. Like I say, I best not spend too much more time on this. A couple others though, I said a couple handicappers, didn't I? Shuffle the deck, 5-year-old for Ted Walsh. Now, you may remember, us Ramblers, we were liking this horse for the Kimyo Grand National double, weren't we? Before he even, you know, had his first race under rules. He's 2 from 4 under hurdles. The project's going quite well. He's rated 140 now. He were 138, but the horse he beat on his last start, Cashledale Lad, followed. He won at Punchestown, so he got put up another 2 to 140. You know, he were tried in Grade 1 company behind the Yellow Clay, pulled up in that. I don't know what happened there, like, you know. Kim, your Grand National dreams are still alive, you know. You dropped him to 2 last time and he won, so he's got a bit of speed about him as well. He has won 2.5. You know, he's a walk in the park Fleming's fifth. His full brother Verdant place improved for 3 Mile. He could be a proper top end class sort of classy handicapper, this fellow. He could be on the right tracks with him. He could be a nice sort of any second now, absolute legend, weren't he? You know, retired this season. Yeah, he could be a nice replacement for Ted Walsh and JP, and maybe sort of follow in them sort of races, you know. So I'd keep an eye out for him. I'd say for the Kim Yor. So he's rated 140 over hurdles. These JPs, they might just let him scrape in, like, you know. We'll see how his season goes. But you'd like to see him run like 4 times, wouldn't you? At sort of 2.5 mile and step up to Kim Yor off like 144 or something, yeah. Will Wise is the other one I wanted to mention. I mentioned him in the Cheltenham review, didn't I? So we'll stay with him as well. 6-year-old for Gavin, point-to-point winner. You know, he weren't in his handicap mark behind the lights. He ran to see the yellow claim of final demand. He, you know, he won on his handicap debut up to 2 miles 7 on heavy. He was bottomless that day as well. Well backed into 11 to 4. He took an age to get on. He sort of travels nice. He didn't really get onto top on top till close home, and he really did sort of stay well there through the line. He had a tough race there, and it was less than 3 weeks till the Pertemps, and you know he ran a fair enough race there, 6 to 24, beat 8 lengths or so. But yeah, that looked a tough. That didn't look an ideal prep like for Cheltenham, you know. Had a tough old race there. And what's happened since? I mean, he sent this horse to Cork, dropped him to 2 mile. Incidentally, Now Is the Hour, he did the same thing with Now Is the Hour, sent him to Cork for like a 2 mile beginners or something, you know. And Now Is the Hour would have been second, wouldn't it, in that sort of 4 miler, that mess of a race they've got now, the 3 mile 6 novice handicap in it. So yeah, like Now Is the Hour, he sent him to Cork for like a 2 mile beginners behind Mouzon West, you know. It would be well beat there, 32 lengths. But he jumped fine, he jumped well. You know, and then he also sent him to Killarney in a 3-horse race behind Pied Piper, who's like rated 150. He got beat a nice respectable distance there, like 23 lengths. So he's had 2 runs already over fences, and I'd imagine that's it now. He's had 8 starts since November, so he'll put him away now. He's had a couple of runs, jumps lovely. Yeah, I like him for that 3-6 race. I do. I still like him for that. He like travels nice, but he's got no change of gear at all. To me, he's just slow, but he does travel nice. I think he should be well suited to that. But he's got that extra on him, and he's had 2, so maybe he's thinking Kimura as well, like, you know. He's got an English mark of 134, maybe 135 now. That's an English mark, so, you know, if he can get into Cheltenham rated around the same over fences, that'd be lovely, like, you know. Yeah, mid to high 130s. Right. A very quick mention to the National. Right. I didn't talk much about this. Winner Nick Rocket, he made the shortlist at 8, but he was one of the first 2 I kicked out. I just thought he had a lot to do at the handicap, like, you know. Thought anything we can learn from that, you know, again, it was a fringe sort of Gold Cup horse. Willie's on a hat trick now, isn't he, for the coming season? And you look at he's had 3 winners of the National: Hedgehunter, Iron Maximus, Nick Rocket. They all prepped in the Bobby Joe, so we'll be paying close attention, very close attention to that Bobby Joe next season. The last